So nice to meet you, Max. Sophia Soto with Awards Radar. Thank you so much for your time, and the series is absolutely incredible.
Thank you so much, Sophia.
So last season, you had directed one episode, episode 6, which presented the trajectory of Jose and Kitty's relationship playing out against family therapy sessions, which was incredible. I wanted to ask, what lesson did you learn from that episode that you applied in season 3?
I don't know what lessons I learned. I so deeply enjoyed working with Javier Bardem. That was a moment. I remember sitting next to the camera in this very small room while we did the conversation with his mother when he kind of confronted her about the abuse that he faced. As the episode I think was very much about kind of intergenerational trauma and kind of can you break the chain? And in the Menendez case, obviously they didn't. And I remember very, very close to Javier Bardem, who's one of my favorite actors of all time, and watching him do this scene. I think we did very few takes of it, and thinking like I'm actually in like a core memory moment of my life right now where I'm getting to do this.
I actually want to go off of that. When you are doing those takes, is there something you're looking for in terms of this is the take? Like this, I feel it right now.
Just the truth. Just the truth, and thinking about that truth. uh you know it's the actor's job to tell the truth, and it's my job to just make sure I'm contextualizing it in the story that we're telling, um and trying to make sure that it's moderated in a way that helps with the overall arc of what the story is. And that episode is very much a standalone episode. I remember reading it and thinking that Ian had written kind of like a little modern day kind of death of a salesman, of a Cuban immigrant, who read those kind of Horatio Alger books and wanted to, give his family a better chance than he had, and ends up failing, um, and succeeding in some ways and failing in others. Obviously, the way of being a parental, loving father and giving his children unconditional love, he wasn't able to do, obviously, because his trauma was too big. But um, yeah, you're just looking for truth. Like, to get to make that kind of little mini movie with Javier was about as much as you can ask for.
And then this season, you directed 6 episodes. Which one intimidated you the most and why?
To me, it was setting the table so we could end episode 7 on that very, very long conversation between two people in a therapist's office in a small hospital in the Midwest in the 50s. And Charlie could, the table, everything we had done before episode 7 could be set up so by the time Charlie gets his diagnosis and feels that relief to find out from somebody finally that there is something wrong with you, or there you do have a mental illness, there's not something wrong with you, you do have schizophrenia, you're not just crazy, you're not just hearing things, there's a reason for it. um was a very, very fine, like needle in a haystack thing to get, because this is a guy who's done really, really awful things, monstrous. We're asking for you to not um, accept the things he's done, to not condone the thing he's done. Obviously, they're horrible, but to have empathy for what led him, that got him there. And it all hits on the the performance in that scene, and that's led us up to there. And based on my working relationship for how many years it's gone on with Charlie Hunnam, to get to do this together, we made some things together that not a lot of people have seen, and then to get to do this thing with him and see him deliver, with so much pressure on himself in that moment, to see him deliver moment in Chicago in the freezing cold and get to be in that room, similar to the Javier moment, but with more at stake because of my relationship with Charlie. And I'd been working on the show in a much longer capacity, and I sat in the room next to the camera and watched that performance. We only did one take of it,
Wow.
and I knew that he did it.
First of all, the fact that it was only one take is incredible in itself. But going off of that, I want to ask you kind of about the process of reading the script, filming the moment and then actually seeing the final version on the TV. What is that like for you when you get to see kind of the final product of it after all the work, after all the editing, after all the filming?
You're just flooded with memories. Like by that point, we were probably day 100 of filming. Charlie and I, were already like brothers. And by that point, probably wanting to, vacillating between wanting to kill each other and wanting to hug each other constantly. I love him. He's one of my favorite people in the world. I think he's like one of the most stunning artists that I know. And it so much of that scene hinges on the performance of the other actor as well, who we hired as the local casting, who's beautiful, Randall, and the performance he gives and the monologues he lands as the therapist, as the psychiatrist, excuse me, at the hospital. And so it's just I'm emotional when I think about it, just because it was we were so tired by that point, and we were both so afraid of making sure that we could land this the right way. And it wasn't, I didn't do, it wasn't, we only didn't do one take of it as a way to show off. There was nothing else I needed. I knew that was right. I knew what he put himself through to get to that performance. And I asked him, I said, you know, we were in between, and I said, I really, I can't, I don't need anything else if you're good. And Charlie's somebody who wants to go as many times as he can. He never gets sick of it. He wants to go and go and go. And when he said, "No, I'm good," he said it really quietly. I knew that he knew he had done what he wanted to do, and I felt um, a lot of relief.
As a viewer and a fan, and then as a director, what is your favorite personal aspect of an anthology series like this?
Just that you get to go and, like, that you get to spend time in these very different worlds with these very different people and see the kind of climates and cultures and societal restraints that create these kinds of people in a pressure cooker. Menendez was all about the excess of the 80s and 90s of Los Angeles, and the keeping up with the Joneses and the needing more and the comparison. And Gein was very much about isolation, being alone in the plains, in the Midwest, in, America's great, dignified 1940s post-war, um, you know, Truman, Eisenhower, like this was what happens when you do if a Norman Rockwell painting, if you scratch at it with a quarter and see what's underneath those happy faces. These people were shell shocked. These people were afraid of the Russians. These people were aware that 6 million Jews had just been killed in the Holocaust. These people were aware that millions of Japanese people were just eradicated from a nuclear bomb. Like, there was a lot of fear swept under the rug. We thought about this William Wyler years of our lives, which is these men returning from the Great War, being celebrated as heroes, but they're fucking shell shocked and they're fucked up. And, behind that Norman Rockwell painting is, in some places, is Ed Gein and his Augusta Gein, his mother, who abused him, probably because she was abused, though we don't know any stories about it. Um, and I love um, the timelessness of them.
This installment was described as the most harrowing, and honestly, it was so gruesome, but obviously so well done in the same breath. What sort of research does it require when you're handling a real life person rather than a fictional monster? Because you also have to, show everything he did and pay respect to the victims in a certain way.
Just lots of research and really, really thoughtful about all of it and how everyone is portrayed and everything that you don't know 100% fact on. The series, the Ed Gein series isn't about condemning Ed Gein. It's about taking this character that has been basically disposed of as just, oh yeah, wasn't he the basis for Texas Chainsaw Massacre or um, Buffalo Bill, and it wasn't that crazy guy, and actually saying, no, no, this was this was a human being who's in a lot of pain. It's not glorifying him. It's not admonishing uh, admonishing him, but it is trying to tell this is these are things somebody did, and here's why we think and all of these really kind of titillating, interesting things about what he did. with the skins and the nipple belts and the bodies and all, and the lamps. Like it's fucking crazy, but it's also like it's very binary when exposed to the power of the moving image that kind of exposed him to Ilsa Koch and those comic books and the Nazis and the the schizophrenia that he lived with, that he never had the ability or language or help to ask somebody and say what's going on.
And I imagine that's a balance you kind of try to find every day. I'm sure there was conversations on set as you're filming the episodes of telling the story, but also balancing it with the crimes he did and the lives he took.
Totally. It's like it's we tried our best, and I'm sure it's not perfect, but we were really thoughtful while doing all of it. And researcher named Olivia Wolf, who's a writer I really love because she's really good at historical research. And my office was, like it is now from the Lizzie Borden stuff, like was
Oh, wow.
absolutely just pasted with constant references from pictures of Ed, pictures of the house, pictures of Wisconsin in that time, pictures of light. Like, so yeah, the research is a lot to give us the freedom when we're on set to kind of be able to go where the moment takes us.
Why do you think it was necessary to show how he influenced the horror genre, talking about those connections with the films? Because I feel like that added such a layer for fans who maybe didn't realize, or viewers that didn't realize, oh, wow, we didn't make the connection that this character was based on this character or this person.
Nothing about Ed Gein when Ryan pitched the show to me, and um, this kind of very quiet, um, non-exceptional guy you would pass in the pharmacy in a small town, having such a huge impact on culture is a really really interesting story. That to me is a story worth telling. Um, if he was super well known and everybody knew about him, I wouldn't be interested in telling that story. But unpeeling that particular onion is interesting to me, just based on the impact that he's had.
And then last question for you. It's been reported by Tadum that you will be directing the first episode of season 4. And obviously we just got to see your office and all the preparation. What are you most looking forward to applying that you learned from season 3? And what makes you keep coming back to this series and getting to tell these stories and the nature of them?
The season is very, very different. It's um, 1890 Fall River. It's lots of women. It's funny. It's, Vicky Creeps again, Rebecca Hall, Ella Beatty, Jessica Barden, Charlie Hunnam. It's really I'm very excited for people to see it. We're into starting episode 5 now, and I'm it's really really different than Geen, and I'm really excited. That's the thing that I like about it is how different they're totally different worlds, and brought similarly, like Lizzie Borden is someone who has a nursery rhyme, kind of dark nursery rhyme written about her, and very little else is known about her, and she actually was hugely um important feminist icon for a lot of people, for suffrage rights. Like she's I one of my favorite movies is Zelig. And in Zelig, you kind of like see this guy who influenced all of the world, but no one kind of knows who he is. And I'm interested in continually putting myself in those spots, and doing the research and learning myself about, like, well, here's what women went through in 1890 in Fall River, and here's how oppressive it was. Like all of those great kind of enlightenment books, like The Awakening by Kate Chopin, and that kind of stuff.
Max, well, I can't wait to see season 4 and congratulations on season 3. Absolutely incredible work. And it was a pleasure speaking with you today.
So nice to speak to you. Thank you so much, Sophia.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.